Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and Blizzard finally made a really good change going forward into Shadowlands. We got a lot of nerfs, and I know a lot of people get skittish when it comes to Blizzard nerfing things, but there's a couple things that had to be addressed. With Shadowlands coming up very, very soon, the problem of trinkets in PvP in the next expansion has been a growing one. So Blizzard decided to finally address it for current trinkets as well as older trinkets in this recent update. So we got a lot of things to take a look at when it comes to changes. First of all, we are going to be moving from one patch into the next. Technically the same patch, just a different version. We're going to be going from patch 9.0.1 to supposedly 9.0.2. And that's supposed to be available with this Tuesday or EU Wednesday reset. 9.0.2 has been the patch for the beta. So if you're someone who has been playing on, let's say, pre-patch and the beta, you would have noticed that there's actually differences in the patches, as there are certain class changes that were available in the beta, but still haven't made it into the pre-patch. So with this change, we should be moving into 9.0.2, which seems like the candidate build for Shadowlands itself. Now, there's one more thing to worry about, whether it is going to be happening or not, and that is some of the finalized class tunings. Generally, Blizzard does this at the very end of a beta cycle. So in the literally last few days before the expansion release, a bunch of tunings is going to be added, buffs, nerfs, after all the data that has been collected. It is something that Blizzard has done in previous expansions, but we're not really sure if they are going to go ahead and do that in this expansion, since, well, I think there's been a lot of changes have done to Shadowlands so far. So maybe this is going to be the final build, and maybe more tuning once Season 1 stuff begins, once the raid begins, once Summon Broken obviously kind of floats up to the top. But this seems like the build going forward. So Blizzard wanted to address some of the old content in terms of some of the old things that we use for, let's say, borrowed powers. Heart of Azeroth secondary stats are going to be reduced by 20%. Blizzard doesn't really want people to be able to get to max level and then still keep using this Heart of Azeroth because it has such a crazy value. I mean, you have 3 secondary stats, and they are actually all are in pretty high in value. So it would have been a while before you actually wanted to replace this thing when it comes to simming your character. So that has been nerfed, so you are supposed to, when you level in Shadowlands, supposed to be replacing this thing. Also, a variety of different trinkets have been nerfed from some of your favorites. Harlan's Loaded Dice, Deadeye Spyglass, Tiny Electromental in a Jar, Vial of Animated Blood, Writhen's Segment of Dressigath all saw a 15% nerf. Some of the other trinkets like Ajara's Font of Power, Gale Color's Boon, some of the Gladiator's Badges and Insignias, Manifesto of Madness, and Vita Charged Titan Shard saw a 25% nerf. Then we had Ashwin's Razor Coral, which is one of the most busted, broken trinkets for almost any melee, and has been good ever since its inception. I mean, even right now in Neolotha, you would have ran with this thing. If it was mythic and a socket, you wouldn't swap it out if you were majority of the melee. That trinket, as well as the Highborn Compendium of Storms, which is actually a craftable trinket from your Inscriptionists. It was kind of good at first because of all the haste it gave. It kind of dropped off for a while, and then it came back with the pre-patch, all of a sudden being insanely good with the haste and the damage that it puts out. Both of those trinkets got nerfed by a whole 40%. I don't think this is going to be nerfs in order to stop people from enjoying the pre-patch, from doing dungeons or even raiding. We are probably going to feel a little bit weaker with all these trinkets being nerfed. However, I feel like the content that we're doing right now, if you are going to be doing any of the raids, any of the dungeons, in the final week of Battle for Azeroth pre-patch, I don't think you should have too much of a trouble with this. I feel like this is mostly done, so once you hit level 60, you're not still using old school trinkets from older dungeons, because let's be honest, some of the things that Blizzard did do well on in BFA is trinkets and the value and the power how the trinkets can bring. Another thing that Blizzard had to address, and it's good that they decided to do at least something for it, is nerfing the PvE trinkets, the raid and dungeon trinkets from Shadowlands for PvP purposes. I think we all can agree, and all of us can have a bit of a sigh of relief that at least Blizzard is trying to tackle these things as early as possible. Trinkets like Dressigath, the bikes, the claws, all those other things are very strong, and they gave PvPers a competitive advantage. But the biggest problem that created is PvPers had to PvE in order to PvP. Imagine trying to gear out your character for the best of the best PvP content, and all you had to do is do a bunch of Mythic Pluses and even raid. Which makes no sense. You would think most of your gear, at least majority of your gear, should be from PvP if you want to PvP. With things like PvP resilience not being on gear, there's no real necessity to get PvP gear. Right now, gear is simply gear. And Blizzard decided to make a couple changes to a couple of these things. To make PvP gear and PvP gearing a little bit more favorable, Blizzard decided to add a PvP vendor, which was necessary for the next expansion. And this vendor is now going to have versatility in every single slot of gear available. It'll give you a couple options for secondary stats, but the primary stat that a lot of PvPers started focusing on, which became the kind of by default or unofficial PvP stat, was versatility. I think versatility does a decent job of working so far. And I think it's a good idea to even influence the versatility playstyle. With certain PvP trinkets, if you combine two of them, gives you even extra versatility for damage and healing. This is all good, and it's not perfect, but at least it was a step in the right direction. But the biggest problem from it is that you still have PvE trinkets. You still have all these wildly strong trinkets, and when Blizzard added a PvE vendor, I think everybody just kind of lost all their minds when it comes to PvP in Shadowlands. You were having people running around with cheat death trinkets and massive heal trinkets, and again one-shotting each other with trinkets and items of sorts. I completely understand Blizzard trying to make some powerful items to put into the game, and maybe powerful items from raids or dungeons, but definitely you shouldn't be using these powerful items, or at least you shouldn't be able to use them, in my opinion, within your PvP content. So we're seeing a lot of the PvP trinkets getting about a 50 to 60% nerf in PvP situations. I don't know if this is all the trinkets that have been a kind of a big problem going forward, but at least majority of big offenders have been put on this list, which is a good thing. All people have been asking and all people want when it comes to PvP is being able to use majority of your class abilities in order to engage with other players and have the least amount of impact from PvE items. I think a lot of people can agree that having some benefit from using PvE trinkets or certain PvE items can be present, but I don't think it should be anywhere near what Gushing Wounds does or what Drestigath and the Bike Trinket used to do in terms of the impact that they bring. There should be maybe a portion of damage, but there definitely shouldn't be a playmaker. And that fine balance is something that Blizzard is going to have to watch going forward. I think all these systems for all the extra versatility, the PvP vendor, and the PvP trinket synergies with a 2-piece bonus for having 2 PvP trinkets is an awesome one, and it's a great idea that Blizzard brought into this expansion. Now, they have to maintain this balance as finely as they can. I would even propose nerfing all the PvE trinkets that are from raids or dungeons by like 80% for any class out there. I feel like certain items can create a pretty big disbalance, and it makes it that much harder in order to balance classes against each other. Not only are you having to balance them in terms of PvE perspective, but also now PvP perspective. So taking some trinkets out of the slot completely, I think wouldn't be the worst thing. With Blizzard going in a different direction for PvP, where we actually have to have a medallion in order to bake CC effects, I think it's a step in the right direction to limit the amount of power we have. But at least this is a good step forward, and hopefully Blizzard continues to closely watch this change when the expansion goes live. This is a pretty big change, and hopefully should make a lot of you guys excited. Thank you guys so much for watching, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see all of you in another video.